It was a cool October morning in 1986. The sky was clear and the kids of White Lake Elementary were excited. They had a field trip to the forest, just a short ride on bus 39. 15 children climbed aboard, laughing, holding lunchboxes and wearing bright jackets. Their teacher waved to the principal before the doors shut, and the yellow bus drove off toward the woods. But that was the last time anyone ever saw them. The bus never came back. No phone call, no signal, no screams, just silence. When police searched the forest, there were no tire tracks, no backpacks, no broken branches. It was like the bus and the kids had been swallowed by the forest itself. Families waited by their phones for days, weeks, years. But the forest never gave back what it had taken. And the strangest part? Not a single person, not even hikers or rangers, saw that bus enter or leave the area, almost like it had vanished into thin air. But decades later, when the bus was finally found, what they discovered inside was far worse than anyone ever imagined. At first, no one thought to blame the bus driver. Mr. Harold Finch was known in town as a quiet, polite man. He had worked for the school district for over 20 years, never a single complaint, always on time, always smiling. Parents trusted him, teachers greeted him like an old friend. To many, he was just Mr. Finch from Route 5 harmless. But after Bus 39 vanished and 15 children disappeared without a trace, people began to wonder, why hadn't there been a distress call? Why was the last radio transmission from the bus just static? Weeks after the disappearance, police visited his small home near the edge of the woods. It was clean, too clean, no photos, no personal touches, just neatly arranged furniture and a shelf filled with notebooks, journals, all dated and labeled, dozens of them. Detectives opened the journal marked October 1986. And that's when the story changed. The first few pages were normal. Talk about fuel prices, the kids being rowdy, complaints about his knees aching. But midway through, his handwriting became shaky, uneven, paranoid. One entry read, "Something follows the bus. I see it in the mirror, always at the edge of the trees." Another, "They whisper to me from the branches. They say the children belong to the forest now." At first, investigators believed it was the ramblings of a tired old man, maybe dementia, maybe stress. But the drawings said otherwise. Tucked between the pages were sketches, crude, frantic, of tall figures with twisted limbs, eyes like hollow lanterns, standing between trees, sometimes alone, sometimes surrounding a yellow bus. One page simply read, over and over, "Don't go to the clearing, don't go to the clearing." And then, in the final entry, written the night before the trip, "They promised me peace. No more voices, no more watching. I just have to bring them. One last ride, the forest is hungry." Authorities never found Finch's body, not in the woods, not in town. It was as if he vanished along with the children. But rumors grew. Some said he was taken by the same thing that took the kids. Others whispered that he was still out there, wandering between the trees, waiting for the next field trip. The school board tried to bury the journals, claimed they were fake, written after the incident by conspiracy theorists. But one officer, now retired, kept a copy. In a recent interview, he said, "I've worked homicides, fires, drownings, but nothing chills me like Finch's last words. Whatever happened that day, it wasn't just a man losing his mind. He knew something, he saw something, and he drove straight into it. And just like that, the man everyone trusted became the center of something unspeakable. Not just a bus driver, but possibly the forest's chosen guide." When Bus 39 failed to return that afternoon, the school called it a delay. By evening, it was a concern. By nightfall, it became a panic. Parents waited outside White Lake Elementary, scanning the road, expecting headlights to appear at any moment. But the road stayed dark and cold. The authorities were called. At 11:43 p.m., a full-scale search began. For weeks, the forest echoed with voices calling out names. "Emily! Marcus! Isabella!" But there was no reply. No sound but the crunch of boots, the distant howl of wind, and the quiet snapping of branches far too close. Helicopters hovered above White Lake Preserve, their floodlights sweeping through endless rows of trees. Cadaver dogs sniffed through wet soil and moss. Divers dragged the lake. Every trail, every cave, every inch of the park was combed. Nothing. No tire tracks, no broken limbs, no torn clothing, not even a piece of the yellow school bus. It was as if the entire vehicle, and everyone inside, had evaporated into the trees. But what unsettled the search teams the most wasn't the silence. It was the feeling. Seasoned rangers, men who had spent their lives in those woods, began refusing to go deeper after the third day. One of them, a man named Bill Krieger, turned in his badge the same week. He left only a note. "The woods aren't empty. They're watching. We were never alone out there." Several search team members reported strange interference with their radios, static, whispering. One officer claimed he heard a child crying in the distance. But when he followed the sound, it led him back to where he started. Others described losing time, wandering for hours, only to find their watches hadn't moved at all. The media covered the story non-stop. The vanishing of Bus 39. Conspiracy theories spread like wildfire, cult activity, alien abduction, mass hallucination, but none of them could explain the absolute lack of evidence. By the fourth week, volunteers stopped showing up. By the sixth, officials started to quietly pull out. In the seventh week, the search was officially declared closed, and the forest closed its mouth. The White Lake Preserve was shut down, fences went up, the area was labeled a wildlife danger zone, and the town of Fairvale, once lively and full of children's laughter, faded into a place people whispered about but no longer visited. But not everyone believed the search had failed. One investigator, who later wrote a book about the incident, claimed, "We weren't looking for something that was lost. We were looking inside something that never wanted to be seen. And when it decided we'd gone too far, it made us leave." No bodies, no bus, no goodbyes, just forest and silence. And the feeling that something was still out there, watching, waiting. It was a morning like any other. In the spring of 2025, a construction crew broke ground near the northern edge of Fairvale, a stretch of land once untouched for decades. Developers had plans for a shopping centre. Trees had been cleared. Earth movers were called in. Then the backhoe struck something. At first, the workers thought it was a tank. Metal, old, rusted. But as more dirt was pulled away, yellow paint began to appear, faded but unmistakable. A school bus, buried nearly 10 feet underground, lying on its side like a dead animal. The number still painted faintly above the front window, 39. Authorities were called immediately. Within hours, the site was surrounded by local police, reporters, and a handful of surviving family members, now much older, many with grey in their hair but eyes still searching for closure. The bus was pulled from the soil with cranes, mud dripping from its windows, vines wrapped around its wheels. Yet somehow, its interior was dry, frozen in time. The door creaked open with a mechanical hiss, long silent. Inside, dust floated like snowflakes through the stale air. The seats were still upright. School bags sat on the floor, lunchboxes on laps, some open, with sandwiches still inside. Mouldy, yes, but strangely preserved. On one fogged-up window, a child's drawing was stuck in place with old tape. A stick figure in front of a bus. Behind it, tall black shapes with hollow eyes. Investigators described the inside of the bus as eerily undisturbed. No signs of struggle, no bodies, no blood, just absence. Almost like the children had stood up and walked out together, leaving everything behind. But the strangest discovery came when forensics examined the ground beneath the bus. There were no impact marks, no damage to the frame, no sign that the bus had crashed or been buried by force. In fact, the soil around it was compacted, intentionally, as if it had been lowered gently into the earth and the ground replaced over it like a grave. And, stranger still, the location where it was found was miles away from the original route. Not just outside the search zone, but in a section of the forest that had been declared too unstable for development. According to old maps, no road had ever reached that area. It wasn't just lost, it had been hidden. And for 39 years it had waited there, undisturbed, forgotten, silent. Until something, or someone, decided to let it be found. One retired officer on the scene was heard muttering, "This bus didn't just get buried, it was put to sleep, like it was hiding or being kept." No fingerprints, no tire marks, no answers. Just a single question scratched into the dust on the rear window. Did they ever leave? Stepping inside the buried school bus was like entering a memory, one that had refused to decay but had twisted into something darker. Investigators expected rot, dust, a vehicle broken by time. But the interior was quiet, too quiet. The floor was dry, the air was heavy. The seats were lined up perfectly, as if waiting for the children to return from recess. And on those seats, 15 small backpacks, each one still zipped, still resting on the spot where its owner had once sat. Inside, the bags were school supplies, plastic pencil boxes, crumpled homework sheets dated October 14th, 1986. One lunchbox had a mold-covered PB and J, another had a juice box, never opened. There were no signs of panic, no claw marks, no broken glass. It was as if the children had simply stood up and vanished. But it was the windows that told a different story. Taped to the fogged-up glass were hand-drawn pictures, childlike scribbles in crayon, but each one disturbing in its own way. Some showed the forest, with tall, shadowy figures hidden in the trees. Others showed the school bus surrounded by shapes, black outlines with long arms and no faces. And then there was the writing. In one seat, a sheet of paper had been jammed between the metal bars of the seat in front. Written in shaky handwriting, "Don't open the door. They're still out there." Another picture, almost torn in half, showed a row of children inside the bus. All of them had red X's over their eyes. And near the back window, barely visible beneath the grime and mold, was a single sentence scrawled in faded marker. "We hear them scratching." Authorities said there were no claw marks or signs of tampering on the bus exterior. But when a forensic team used UV light inside the bus, they saw it. Thin, jagged scratches across the ceiling, barely visible to the naked eye, looping from one end of the bus to the other, as if something had crawled along the roof, watching, waiting. There were no footprints inside, only dust and silence. Yet every person who entered that bus, even for just a few minutes, later reported the same feeling, a pressure in their chest, a prickling on their skin, and a sound so faint it was almost imagined, of nails on metal. One officer took a photo of the drawings, hoping to analyze them later. But when he developed the images, something was wrong. In the photos, reflections appeared in the windows, not of the officers, but of children, staring back, expressionless, motionless, as if frozen in time. When the authorities sealed off the bus, they left most of the drawings behind. No one wanted to take them. No one wanted to know what might come with them. Whatever had happened on that bus had not faded with time. It had been preserved like a warning or a memory, waiting to be finished. Just when authorities thought they had found all there was to find, the real horror began. The forensics team decided to examine the ground where Bus 39 had rested. At first, it seemed normal. Compacted soil, tree roots, and signs of erosion. But as they dug a little deeper beneath where the bus had been found, something caught their eye. Scratch marks, dozens of them, long, deep claw marks etched into the dirt. As if something, or many somethings, had crawled upward from below. And that's what made it terrifying. The claw marks weren't leading into the ground. They were leading out. At first, officials thought maybe an animal had disturbed the area, but these were no animal scratches. They were too uniform, too long. As if fingers, not paws, had dug their way toward the surface, scraping against rocks, ripping through roots. Like whatever had been buried with the bus had finally clawed its way out. Worse still, they found the marks not just beneath the center of the bus, but in a circular formation around it. As if the bus had been surrounded, as if something had risen around it, and then vanished without a trace. Samples were taken from the soil. They came back. Strange. The minerals had changed, twisted into compounds scientists couldn't explain. One geologist said it resembled scorched earth, but there were no burn marks. Another claimed it was as if the ground had been fed on. And deep in one of the outer claw tunnels, a small object was found, a crumpled shoe, child-sized, untouched by time. But that wasn't all. A week after the bus was discovered, the construction site was abandoned. Workers refused to return. They reported hearing things at night, scratching from underground, whispers when they walked alone, tools vanished, machinery failed. One night, a foreman left a voice message for his boss. Something's moving under the dirt. It's not animals. It sounds like breathing. He didn't return to work the next day. He never answered his phone again. And just like that, the land was declared off-limits. The bus was moved to an undisclosed facility. The investigation was buried under government red tape. But rumors spread. Locals said they saw shapes near the woods at night. Tall, thin shadows that watched but never moved. Some even claimed to hear distant children's laughter echoing through the trees. It became clear whatever happened in 1986 didn't end when the children disappeared. The buried bus wasn't a grave. It was a door, a waiting place, a holding space, and something, or someone, had been down there for decades, and now it might be loose,